Class, big up. Welcome to class 2. I'm going to do the same thing again. Try to make it a little shorter than the last video. Go over the summary. Go over the topic. Have it here. Alright, and today's topic is characters. We're going to focus on Lenny and George as characters. And then we're going to go to the quotes, the clip, the discussion. And that's just going to kind of be how it runs from here. Alright. Again, just to read over the quick short summary, and then I'm going to read over some notes that I have. Now, first thing is to go over the section 1 summary again, where it says, itinerant workers George, Milton, and Lenny Small rest in a clearing by the river, on their way to a nearby ranch where they expect to sign on for temporary work. They have hurriedly left the last ranch where they worked, following an incident following Lenny. Lenny pleads with George and to tell him over and over again about their dream ranch, where Lenny's main task will be to tend to the rabbits. Now, if you haven't watched the first video, please go back through Edmodo, find the link, watch the first video where we talk about the city. Talk about the Great Depression, very slightly speak about the American dream and how it affects what is to come. Now, what I actually want to look on right now are the characters, because we have two main characters that actually push the plot of this novel, which is Of Mice and Men. Now, the idea behind this is that George and Lenny are two characters that are polar opposites. Now, in the notes that I found that discusses the summary and the characters, it says, George and Lenny are opposites in many ways. Not only is George the brains and Lenny the brawn. Brawn means physical strength. But their looks are dissimilar, since George is small and thin while Lenny is tall and heavy. George plans ahead and makes good choices, but Lenny can't remember anything and always makes mistakes. They are, however, dressed the same in jeans and jeans jackets, carrying small bindles to sleep on which to hold their possessions inside. Clearly, George and Lenny have known each other for a long time. George mentions Lenny's Aunt Clara, who it seems used to take care of Lenny before she died. George also comments on the fact that Lenny is always getting him in trouble. Since Lenny doesn't have common sense, he does bad things and get them fired from their jobs. For example, George references the last town they worked in, which is called Weed, where Lenny tried to touch a woman's dress because it was soft. The woman became upset, which caused Lenny to grab the dress in a panic, which forced George and Lenny to run and hide in an irrigation ditch the rest of the day because the men in that town assumed Lenny was trying to hurt or take advantage of the woman. Now, the first thing we have to remember is that these characters have very distinct personality traits, and it is the opposite nature of these personality traits that pushes this book forward. Now, we're dealing with the Great Depression, we're dealing with a lack of jobs, so the last thing these guys need is innocence or lack of common sense to make them lose these jobs, because they're struggling, they're hungry, they can't eat anything. And then the funny thing about it is Lenny and George are technically a very good combination. George is very smart and Lenny is very, very strong, right? Lenny is very, very strong, and these farms need workers that are strong and smart. So it's funny that this should be an advantage, but it tends, as we read the book, we realize that it tends to become a problem. And not on purpose, because Lenny doesn't mean anything by it. There's a little bit of childlike innocence that lets us know that Lenny is not all there, you know? He might be a little slow, there might be some type of mental issues. We're not exactly sure what it is, but we know that it causes problems for George. Now, the first quote that we're going to go to know. George unslung his bindle and dropped it gently on the bank. I ain't sure it's good water, he said. Looks kinda scummy, because they're in a place that has a lot of lakes and rivers and things like that. And if it's not a river that is flowing well, the lake can have a lot of stagnant water, right? But listen how they describe Lenny. Lenny dabbled his big paw in the water and wiggled his fingers so the water arose in little splashes. Rings widened across the pool to the other side and came back again. Lenny watched them go. Look, George, look what I done. Now, what I like about this quote is that it breaks down how Lenny is seen immediately. And how he's seen, obviously, is that he's seen like an animal. He's seen like an animal, and George is the owner. And George is trying to train his animal. George is trying to get his animal to be obedient, I guess. You know, and the thing about that, why it's interesting, is because while he's trying to train or keep Lenny obedient, he's still getting into trouble. Just like a playful dog that breaks things or messes up the place, right? And these descriptions that Steinbeck uses, dabbled his big paw. So immediately, we have to keep in mind that Lenny is like a big strong bear or an ox or some type of animal that has its use but can be very destructive and don't realize what they're doing. So it's kind of a little bit of foreshadowing, preparing us for that type of nature. And it's really interesting because while he's being described as an animal, one thing for sure is that Lenny loves animals, you know, especially small fur animals. But because he's so clueless to how strong he is, he doesn't realize that he can't handle these animals. He destroys them, or he destroys everything around him. The next quote that I want to actually jump to. Oh, sure, George. I remember that now. His hands went quickly into his side coat pockets. He said gently, George, I ain't got mine. I must have lost it. Right? He's talking about his work card and his bus tickets. Two very important pieces of information. I ain't got mine. I must have lost it. He looked down at the ground in despair. You never had none, you crazy bastard. This is George now. I got both of them here. You think I'd let you carry your own work card? No, this is a very good quote to remember, especially when you're writing essays or anything about it, because this is one of those moments where we know that Lenny cannot be responsible for himself. Lenny can't even remember that he didn't have the card. So it's almost 100% sure that if he did have the card, he'd lose it. So George knows this, prepares for that, and keeps the card and the bus tickets to himself, and then lets Lenny know, you're crazy, why would I give you that? You understand? And it's funny because it would feel like an insult to others, but Lenny is not even going to remember that George said that because of how simple-minded he is or whatever issue Lenny might have. What's good about this as a character building is that the writer is allowing us in the first chapter to fully understand the type of characters we're dealing with. The leader, the follower, strong man, the simple-minded, the smart-minded, all of this. And then we're going to see how this contrast of characters becomes an interesting plot piece, right? The setting becomes the surroundings that these two characters have to survive in. And now we're breaking on the type of characters just through the conversation. You understand? The writer is showing you, he's not telling you. He's not saying Lenny wasn't smart. Lenny doesn't have any sense. Lenny isn't responsible. No, what he's doing, he's showing us a dialogue between the two. And we now can break down that one of these characters don't have it all together, and the other character has to take care of him. The last quote now. George lay back on the sand and crossed his hands under his head. Lenny imitated him, raising his head to see whether he were doing it right. God, you're a lot of trouble, said George. I could get along so easy and so nice if I didn't have you on my tail. I could live so easy and maybe have a girl. Now, what you find is that Lenny admires George. You understand? Lenny admires George. But Lenny admires George in a way where he just has a lot of respect. He looks up to George. And while Lenny looks up to George and wants to imitate him, right, which seems annoying to George, but it's a little bit of symbolism that he wants to be like George. George is the guy that can get things done, right? But while he's doing that and admiring George, right, George is thinking that his life would be so much better if Lenny didn't exist, right? And that comes down to the amount of trouble he gets in, the amount of responsibility it takes. It takes so much responsibility to take care of Lenny that if he didn't have Lenny, his life would be actually better. So it's one of those things where we know as the reader start to think, well, what if he just stopped taking care of Lenny? It's not really his responsibility. You know what I mean? So why is he doing it? What does that say about George? You know, and what if he just left Lenny to do his own thing? What would happen? You know, so it opens a lot of doors to the questions of the type of person that George is, the type of person Lenny is, and how we as a reader can analyze that in this setting. And by this setting, we're talking about a Great Depression where you're trying to feed yourself. You're not just trying to live nice. You're not trying to be in a fancy house. You're trying to have an actual roof over your head. And now you have to take care of somebody who is obviously not stable. So keep that in mind when reading this chapter and when reading this book. And also keep in mind the idea that the dreams for each of these characters will be different. Lenny's dream is to have that ranch. George's dream is kind of to have that ranch as well. But I think he more wants to have a family. And Lenny is the adult that he has to take care of like a family that he didn't ask for, that he didn't need. So it's now stuck in his mind, what if he didn't have this burden? You know? And last but not least, I think this chapter is great character development. And it shows you just how much work dialogue can do in building these characters. That is it for the quotes. What we're going to do now is we're going to play a video clip right here.
Okay, listen, this time don't forget. We went into Murray and Reddy's and they give us work cards and bus
George,
tickets.
I remember that now. But George, I ain't got mine. I must have lost it.
You never had none. I got both of them. You think I'd let you carry your own work card?
Well, I thought I had it in my own pocket.
What'd you take out of that pocket?
There's nothing in the pocket, George.
I know it ain't. You got it in your hand. Now, what you got in your hand?
George, that's in my mouth. But I didn't kill it, George. Honest, I found it there.
Give it here.
George, leave me have it.
Give it here. What do you want with a dead mouse, anyway?
I was just petting it with the fingers while we was walking along.
Yeah, well, you ain't petting no mice when you walk with me. You gonna give me that mouse? Or am I gonna have to sock you? Come on. Blubbering like a baby, a big guy like you. Lenny, I ain't taking it away from meanness. That mouse ain't fresh, Lenny. Get another mouse that's fresh, I'll let you keep him a little while.
Yeah, I don't know where there is no other mouse. The lady used to give me some, but that lady ain't here no more.
Lady? Don't you even remember who that lady was? That's your Aunt Clara. She stopped giving them to you. You was always killing them by petting them too hard. Tell you what I'll do. First chance I get, I'll get you a puppy. Huh? That'd be better than mice. You could pet them harder. Okay?
Alright, now that you've seen the video clip, there are so many things that you have to think about when you look at that video clip. First things first is how or what is so wrong with Lenny that he can't understand certain concepts, you know? The next thing is, what is the writer trying to show us with him having that dead mouse in his pocket? You know? And it's really dark because one part of you is just like, that's pretty nasty. It's pretty gross to have a dead mouse in your pocket. But then when you look back on it and realize that the reason he has a dead mouse in his pocket is because he wants to pet something soft. he likes something furry. It has a little tenderness to it, where we kind of see a softer side of Lenny. But then, what does that say? You know, there's a little bit of foreshadowing that is happening there as well. It being furry and it being something that is dead that he wants to pet. And those will come up in future chapters. But you have to start looking at how Lenny interacts with things, how he treats death, how he treats animals or things that feel nice. So that means that Lenny is very tactile, and that works well with somebody who is so strong. His strength can be used, especially if it's somebody that works with touch and tactile nature. But then, last but not least, how can George survive while taking care of that? How can George survive while taking care of Lenny? And it opens the door to a whole lot of questions. And the main one is, will they be able to survive socially wherever they're going? And that's what we're going to look at when we go to chapter 2. But before we reach chapter 2, we're going to have one more class session where we talk about themes. And with that theme, I might break down that theme in general, maybe do a little bit of comparison with Animal Farm and Miguel Street. And then it's going to be a shorter video, and we'll just talk about those themes, and then you'll have a quiz. Alright, a quiz on chapter 1. So that is all for class today. Big up on yourself.